Hi, guys. Welcome back to another episode of the Autism Our Story podcast. Today, I have the opportunity to chat with Jessie Caraway, the mother of Aliza, who is a 10-year-old non-speaking autistic girl. Today, we're going to be talking all about Aliza's autism journey, and we're going to also be talking about Gestalt language processing, which is something that I learned for the first time on Jessie's page. She does a great job sharing about Gestalt language processing and about how her daughter communicates. And so we're going to be talking all things Gestalt language processing. Jessie, thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so excited to chat with you. I'm going to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself, and we're going to start from there.
Okay. Thanks for having me today, Nicole. I'm so excited to be with you and to talk about autism and Gestalt language processing. I am Jess Caraway. My daughter is Aliza. She is 10 years old and she's autistic. And my son is 12 years old. His name is Thayer. And our family lives in a rural town in Idaho. And yeah, I'm just so glad to connect with you and to chat about this today.
Yes, thank you so much for joining me and just for being willing to share. I know that I have learned so much from you when you just from feeling relatable. Well, your daughter and my son are like almost the same. They do most of the same things. And then learning about Gestalt language processing, you were like the page that, I learned it from. And so I am just so excited to bring you in this space so that you can also share with others that may not know about it. And hopefully, other moms can learn about it and start to, realize that their child is actually communicating that way.
Yeah, for sure.
So yes, I just wanted to, start from the beginning. Can you tell us a little bit about your autism journey, how you found out your daughter was autistic, and just a little bit about that story.
Yeah, so we kind of had the traditional pediatrician appointments where, they give you the checklists of milestones that they should be meeting and kind of that 1 to 2, 2 to 3 year range. We were definitely noticing some milestones that weren't being hit, specifically in communication. And we were just the type of parents that were very like, maybe she's on her own path, her own timeline. We kind of just leaned into it out of not knowing any different. Our son was a very early talker. And so understanding that Aliza was communicating differently, we just sort of wanted to wait and see if she would grow into that. It's why I think it's so important for families and parents to share, specifically with social media, because you start to learn the things to look for. And hindsight's 2020. We would have probably realized she was autistic when she was, 9 months old. Had we had the information. We had a couple rocky pediatrician appointments where autism was not spoken about in a positive manner, and that kind of we hit a roadblock with that. That was really hard for me. Especially just all the unknown. And, eventually we got ourselves to a pediatrician that was helpful. And we started to understand that she was autistic. But she did not, because we were during COVID and insurance, trying to get her on Katie Beckett waiver. Getting her diagnosis was a long process. We got stuck on, I think it was 3 total wait lists, 2 of which she was removed from without any notification. They just like another company bought them out. And so the list just disappeared. So it was like we kept hitting these hurdles, but we knew she was autistic. But it wasn't until actually just last summer when she was 9 that she got her official diagnosis. But I would say we knew by about 4. We were really starting to kind of come to terms with that. And then by 5, I was seeking out therapies and really trying to understand how to support her.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, the part where you talk about how autism, was being talked about in a negative way, I can relate to that. Our son, we struggled with the pediatrician. They would not help us, he always saying like, oh, he'll grow out of it and things like that. And that was really hard for me. And we also, struggled to get a diagnosis there. I had to just get it from a different center without the help of the pediatrician. I had to figure it out all by myself. So I can relate to that. And I'm thinking like things are changing now. And yeah, now that there's more awareness about it. But
For
yeah.
sure. Yeah. I think the pediatrician thought we knew more about autism than we did. So it was really interesting because she sort of spoke about it in like this, she never actually said the word autism. Um, but she kind of came at it as, why don't you have a diagnosis? Why aren't you supporting her? Why aren't you doing this? She's not going to be able to accomplish anything in her life because you're not doing this and you're not doing that. And so I left just like, oh my goodness, we're never going to know how to support her. I'm the worst mom ever. Like, it was just a really hard realization. And once I was able to kind of recoup from that and find somebody that was able to say, you know, here's why it's important to have a diagnosis, here's why you want these services. But yeah, it was just very overwhelming. And again, looking back, I'm like, why didn't I know more about it? Why didn't I, you know, research but you know, we kind of missed that. You know, she's 10, we kind of missed that cusp of social media awareness where it's really out there now. And that sounds so silly to say, but it does. So much information is spread through social media, and helpful things that don't shame you or don't make you feel like, you know, you're a horrible mom or you did something wrong. So yeah, it's been an
Yeah.
interesting journey for
Yeah.
sure.
And I just, from what you're saying, I just kept thinking it isn't really not your fault that you didn't know any of that. And I just love how you you got to a place now where you know something you needed back then, and you're doing such a great job at just, providing for others what you didn't have then. How you share your story, how you share information is amazing. And I know that there are a lot of, your followers and even me. I'm thankful for that because yeah, it's hard when you don't see, information when the professionals aren't even, telling you the things that you should learn from them. They're just expecting you to know.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
So now we can talk about Gestalt language processing. How did you find out that your daughter was a Gestalt language processor? How did you come about knowing about this?
So her speech therapist that we got started with, it was probably about a month into services with her that she was providing, that she kind of brought it up as just like it was almost like she was talking out loud. She was just sort of talking about Gestalt language processing and asking if I had heard about it, and just kind of in a general way. We had been talking about an AAC device. And so we sort of just were having these little conversations where we were just bouncing ideas off of each other. And, you know, she mentioned it, and it was like all these light bulbs were going off, things that totally made sense. And I went home and I researched it, just dove like so far into it. And I was like, had all these realizations of like, yes, this is how Aliza's brain works. This is how she processes the world around her, language, communication. And the next week I came back and said, you know, I think the thing that made the most sense to me, because Aliza wasn't necessarily communicating tons of scripts or words at that point, but in how she played. I was having a really hard time with Aliza would take like bins of toys and dump them out everywhere. And I was like, why is she doing this? Why does everything have to be dumped out? Like, she would never just grab something and play with it. She had to have everything out, and then she would pick up each piece and play with what she wanted. And I was really focused on that part of it from a personal standpoint, which obviously once I got over that part, I
Yeah.
was able to kind of come to terms with, oh, this is how her brain works. Like, this is how she is processing playing. She wants to see the big picture first. So just like Gestalt language processing, they want to see a chunk of language first, and then they can break it apart. So for her, she wanted to see, what are all the toys in this bin that I might play with? And then here's the ones that I want to, you know, use for whatever she was setting up or whatever she was doing. And that really gave me a visual that that will never leave my mind. I just think about that all the time, how she needs this complete image of it. And that's so much of what Gestalt language processing is. And so yeah, once I, you know, her SLP and I were just like totally on board with that. We moved forward with supporting her in a way that was, that first Gestalt language processing step of acknowledging her echolalia or her scripts, and just kind of leaning into all of that as much as we could. And then it wasn't long after that I found on Instagram Meaningful Speech, Boho Speechy. There's so many accounts now that are sharing great information. And I always wish if we were, again, like we're kind of on the older side of this, but like if Aliza was younger, I look at Playtime with Tor. She has a YouTube channel that is all Gestalt language. Like that's her passion is scripts and songs and things they can use. And I just think, wow, that would have been so helpful. And even still, we use some of her even just her models and things that she does, but there's so many good resources, and that really has helped us more than anything support Aliza.
Wow, that's amazing. I have kind of heard of her. I need to really look into it. Maybe Kyla would love it. But I'm glad that there's someone out there that's actually, focused on that. And
Yeah, for sure. She's like I always tell people she's like Miss Rachel, but for Gestalt language processors.
yeah,
So it's like, because Miss Rachel has great stuff in her,
yes,
but the language is not for a Gestalt language processor. There is a different way you would model that. And so anyway,
yeah,
she just has really great stuff. She also has a really great account. She has free resources. I can't sing her praises enough. She's
yeah.
just always sharing information, and she's a really good resource.
Wow. Can you share her name again?
Yeah, it's her handle on YouTube or on Instagram is Playtime with Tor.
Okay.
And I can't think of her last name, but her first name is Victoria, but she goes by Tor.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
Awesome. Yeah, I'm hoping, I think others might want to, go look for her. So that would
for
be
sure.
awesome. So, how does Gestalt language processing present in Aliza? Can you please share like examples?
Yeah. So at first, when we started to understand what to watch for, we noticed that she would, she wasn't speaking, she wasn't communicating conversationally, but she would sing like a full song from a show, or she would imitate a Mickey Mouse scene with the perfect intonation. And a lot of times, especially with younger kids, that will start with that kind of like that mimicking the intonation. So you might not be able to even understand what they're saying. You're just hearing them, the sound is coming out, the word approximations are coming out, and you're realizing, oh, they're trying to mimic that. And so, yeah, once we realized that that's what she was doing, we were able to pick up, more and more what she was communicating to us through these scripts. Some recent examples, she is so funny because she doesn't like the doctor. She has a hard time with new places, things like that. But one weekend, Thayer was really sick, her older brother, and he was coughing. And there was one night where he was up coughing, and I was putting her down for bed, and she said, doctor. And I'm like, oh no, I'm thinking, oh, does she not feel good? And
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, you don't feel good. And then she'd kind of just look at me, and she's not conversational. She doesn't answer
Yeah.
yes or no. But she still communicates very well with these phrases. And then Thayer coughs again, and she says, go to Dr. Daisy. And I'm like, how interesting. Like, she must not be feeling well. And then the third time, I picked it up, she was asking if Thayer needed to go to the doctor. She was just basically saying he's sick, like
Yeah.
acknowledging that,
Wow.
and yeah, those are moments where you're like, okay, not only is there like the empathy part of it, she's
Mm.
understanding, she's feeling for him, she's grasping that he doesn't feel well. There's a lot there that anytime we have those moments where we figure out like a script from her, I'm constantly thinking of how can I then use that script to help model for her in the future.
Yeah.
So like the next day when he was coughing, I would be like, Thayer doesn't feel well, no doctor, like, he just needs to rest, or, you're trying to think of ways to pull from that. experience. And that's where we've seen a lot of growth.
Yeah.
And, there are so many examples where I think, a lot of autism parents will talk about presuming competence. And you have some people that think, oh, Gestalt language processing isn't really a valid form of communication. But then when you experience it yourself and you understand that they are grasping the situation, there was an example where she was outside playing with bubbles, and she had taken the bubble solution and dumped it out. And so she kept asking me for more, and I was showing her the container like, it's empty, there's nothing in here. I all I'm thinking is, oh, she doesn't understand that the bottle's empty. Okay, well, that was not
Yeah.
not what it was. I was, and that's what I think all of us parents can relate to, those moments where you're just like, oh, well, she's just not getting it. And it was like,
Yeah.
no, she was getting it, because
Exactly.
she turned to me and she was like, wash, 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 which is what she says when she wants to wash her hands. And she knows if she washes her hands, she can use soap, which will make
Yeah.
bubbles. And so it was like, here I am just thinking like, oh, she doesn't understand that the bottle's empty. And it's like, we have those moments all the time, even still with Aliza. And I feel like we've had years of understanding how she communicates this way. But each time I just try to put that away
Yeah.
and add it to the list of ways to be self-aware in those moments, to presume competence, to know that she is communicating what she needs or wants or is asking about. And I think that's kind of the, each example that we experience with her, and each time she communicates more, we build our own confidence in having confidence in her. And that's just the reality of it. I'm not a Gestalt language processor, so supporting her is going to look different.
Yeah.
But we've definitely seen with each time we uncover a new Gestalt and a new script and a new thing she's asking for, it's like these building blocks that we can, it's the stack is getting higher and we're learning so much more. And it's really neat to see those moments where you're like, wow, not only does she understand, but like she has this receptive language, conversational, pre-conversational, however you want to say that,
Mhm.
skill that we need to really give her credit for. And
Yeah.
so we've seen that a lot this year, especially. The growth has been really big. And, I think the more you learn about GLPs, the better you are at supporting them.
Yes. That's amazing. I just love how you said you try to, I'd never thought of it, but you try to take from what she said, her gestalt, and try to see if you can use it next time,
Mm,
to build on it. And that's where you've seen growth. I had never really thought of that. I was just, always just focused on like that moment. Oh, he's communicating.
right.
And I'm like, oh, wow, we can pull that into it. That's one thing I'm still learning, um,
Mm-hmm.
how to, build on it and not just, stay on just acknowledging that he said something, he's communicating. I want to be able to pull it. So yeah, I love that. And I feel like
Yeah.
I need to start using that so that Kyler can, I can build on what he's already doing, and we can see more growth in that, and his communication can expand. So
Yeah.
yeah, I really love that. Yeah, Kyler's examples from one of the examples that I remember is when he doesn't use his voice. That's the difference.
Mm-hmm.
That's like something I have not seen other kids do much. But
Mm-hmm.
he because he won't use his voice, he will use his AAC voice, his voice, and
Right.
he will type on that voice. And he one day he was playing with his iPad and it died. And so I hear him typing, "Oh no, Daisy, come back!" And something just told me, "Wow, he's like wanting his iPad back, like it's dead." And so I was just like, "Oh, Kyler." And so yeah, I just acknowledged him, and I didn't like in that moment. I just said, "Well, the iPad needs to charge," and so I brought him to charge. But yeah, I'm still learning to build on that. So yeah, that's awesome. I had never thought of that.
I try to keep like a note in my phone, and like after it's so you described it perfectly. Like when you hear your child say something like that and you're kind of in the moment, you're just wanting to really like connect with them. You're wanting to just process what they've said. And so a lot of times, like afterwards, after I've had time to process what it is, I'll just jot down like a little note where I'll put something like go to Dr. Daisy, or wash, 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 or, I'll put those things in there, and just sort of look back at them, when I can, so that I can pull up examples or use those again. And it's helped a lot, because I think, parents who are trying to support a Gestalt language processor, especially if they aren't connected with an SLP that's doing that, you can get really caught up in the stages and the modeling and what does that look like. And it's so much easier when we can release ourselves from that and just, the biggest thing is really acknowledging that they're
Yeah.
communicating, acknowledging the connection that they're trying to make with you. And I'm starting to see a lot more SLPs talk about that more. Don't get so hung up on the stages of GLP. Don't get so hung up on the perfect models. Use what they're giving you. And that's been super helpful.
Yeah. And I feel like it just empowers you as a parent, to just
Mm,
know, oh, I don't have to just rely on this. I'm just going to work with what my child is, because sometimes they're the leaders. They'll lead us through it,
for
and
sure.
just follow along and just let them lead the way. I love that.
Mm.
Yeah. So I'm curious to know, how has finding out about Gestalt language processing and how that your daughter is a Gestalt language processor, how has that helped, how has that impacted your quality of your life and her quality of life?
Mm. So I think the number one thing that we've noticed is just the connection. Um, I know we've talked about this before, you and I have, in messages and just in little videos we both shared, but that the connection, the look in their eyes, the way they want to, acknowledge, it's almost this like unspoken thank you of you see me, and when you experience that, there's just nothing like it. It has changed everything for us. Not because, I try to hold space for, especially moms that are, their kids are just getting diagnosed, who they really want to hear their child's voice, or they really want to communicate with their child. And 100%, I get that. I completely, they should feel validated in that desire. But there is something about connecting with your child, and understanding that they feel heard, they feel seen. And that kind of shift for me of, if I'm just a firm believer that whether a child communicates verbally, whether they type, whether they spell, whether they use an AAC, whether they use gestures, the prioritizing the connection has been the perspective shift for me. And that's really taught me a lot in parenting in general.
Yeah.
And then also just in the way I communicate with Aliza, and the way that I don't put any communication method on a pedestal. And so that's really changed my perspective. It's really changed how, I can support her. And I used to tell people all the time when Aliza first started speech therapy, and I thought, this is it. We're going to find all the answers. We're going to get, everything's going to be, we're going to catch up, and she's going to be speaking. And I would say, I know there's a key. I know she has words in her head. I can tell there was like something about the way that she was doing things, or the way she would make eye contact at certain moments. And I was like, there's got to be a key, and it will unlock this treasure chest of words for her. And looking back now, I'm like, yeah, Gestalt language processing was the key. Like, that is the key for her, is understanding that she does have a way of communicating and a way to say things. And even like you're saying with Kyler, even, a fully non-speaking child can still be a Gestalt language processor and
Yeah.
communicate in different ways. And it's just interesting to me that I had put that, with that key, I was looking for the lock of spoken words, and that wasn't what we needed. What we
Yeah.
needed was the processing and understanding that that's how she analyzed language and took it in. That's how her brain worked. And then for us, that has led to more spoken language, but then also, communication breakdowns as well when you're trying to kind of delve into where are the scripts coming from, what do they actually mean, is it literal, is it not. But yeah, it's been the connection piece of learning about Gestalt language processing, feeling like I can validate that I know she's saying something has been the biggest change for me. And then for her, you can just see it. You can see her face light up when someone understands her. I know we've talked about that a lot together, like just that they know, they understand, they feel, I think about with my son when he was younger, if he would fall down and get hurt, you can just scoop him up and comfort him and, oh, are you okay? Oh yeah, I'm okay. And he can reciprocate that, and you can have a conversation of, it's okay that you feel sad, or it's okay that you feel this. And then he can respond to that. And with Aliza, in those type of moments, she might just need me to say, oopsie daisy from Mickey, but to her, it's like that was the comfort she needed. That was the communication she needed, was the language that makes sense in her mind. And so, yeah, there's just been so many good things that have come from learning about Gestalt language processing, and so much that I have learned to lean into and really just like soak it in and be an observer, as well as her support in it.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, and yeah, from what you just said, I can remember one of the first times I realized Kyla was communicating through his Mickey Mouse phrases was when it was bedtime and we were, late for bedtime, and I realized because he said, look at the time. And I was like, wait a minute. You're saying we're late for bed. Like, I got the whole idea. I just didn't like, it was just like, is it bedtime, buddy? And he just was so happy. And I was
Yeah.
like, oh my goodness. And like, that was my first experience of feeling like, wow, he feels heard. And so yeah, I remember that. And I always see it whenever I'm able to, figure out what he's saying at any other time. And yeah, it's always the same. He just lights up and just feels heard, and it's amazing to see. Yeah, they already struggle to communicate, and so if we can acknowledge what they're like, being able to just know what they're trying to say and like figure it out, it must mean the world to them.
Yeah.
So, as we already know, there's a lot of people that, feel like Gestalt language processing is not, a valid means of communication, and echolalia is a big part of that. What do you think is the biggest misconception about echolalia?
I think that people get very hung up on the fact that echolalia is often repetitive. You'll see it a lot as a stimming mechanism. But I've just experienced too many times with Aliza where she has used echolalia to communicate something to us that fit the context, it fit the environment of what was happening. I've seen it so many times, and I just refuse to not validate that for her. I try to really put myself in her position when I'm trying to like process how she communicates or how she's trying to get her point across. So like a basic example of this would be, if when she was younger, especially, like the way that she would communicate was by yelling or hitting or, wanting to, you could tell she wanted to like bite us or, but in the moments when you can step out of what's happening, when you can step out of the heightened nervous system feeling, and you can really process and be like, well, yeah, like if I had tape over my mouth and I wasn't able to communicate any other way and I was trying to get someone's attention, what would I do? What gestures would I use? And so you can really kind of like break down what does that look like if you did not have a spoken voice, how would you get someone's attention that you needed something or that you were hurt? Or, and so to me, echolalia really shows their persistence to get their point across. Like, they want to communicate, they want to, and they're going to use every tool that they have. And I just, personally, the stories I've heard when I've heard other autistic people talk about their own scripts and gestalts that they use, and why sometimes using a script in a certain situation is easier for them than something else. It's truly one of the most creative ways I've ever seen somebody communicate. I can't imagine pulling from like this never ending, catalog of phrases in my head and being able to use it contextually, but that's, what they do. And I think I hope that some of the SLPs or speech language organizations will start to really validate Gestalt language processing. I think it's, I have yet to hear someone say, I've learned about Gestalt language processing and it hindered my child's development, or it's hurt our connection, or it's, made them not communicate. Like, it's not unlike an AAC device. It's not unlike the spelling boards. Like, you allowing your child access, even if that means a repeated phrase from a show or a song or something you've said in the past, validating that, allowing them to use that, it opens up so many doors. And I'm all ears if somebody has an experience where it hasn't worked for them, but it just seems like Gestalt language processing really is validating the way that their mind works and the way that they process things.
Yeah, I just love that. And I share the same sentiment. I just feel like I cannot deny that my child is communicating. It's right there, and there's no way I can ignore that. He's communicating, and the fact that it's like contextual, it fits the situation. Like when we had a baby and our baby would cry, Kyler listens to the episode of Goofy Baby when Goofy turns into a baby. And he would I think he would struggle with the noise, and he's trying to, in that moment, he's just trying to say, wow, the baby's crying, and he talks about the baby being burped, or what to do to help the baby. And it's amazing. And how can I look at that and say, oh, that's nothing? It's just because he listens to it over and over again. It's because he's really trying to. That's what I feel, and I love that you feel the same way, because I've felt oh, maybe I'm the only one, but I'm not. It's right there in front of you, and there's no way you can deny that. Because at this point, like you said, this is a creative way, such a beautiful creative way that they've found to communicate. Imagine having to figure out a way to communicate and in such a beautiful and perfect way, so creative. So I just love that. And I hope other parents, if you have a child that can't communicate any other way, it's great to, realize that they're actually communicating and validating that, So maybe in the future they find a different other way that's better than that. But for now, that's amazing. That is absolutely great. And even with Kyler, another example that I remembered, when he doesn't sleep, he can relate to Bluey so much. There's so many messages in Bluey, and Kyler knows it, and he's just realized it. And, it's amazing what he shares. He'll listen to the episode where Bluey can't sleep. It's not sleepy time. It's another one that Bluey wants to be something, and she can't wait to sleep so that she could dream about being. I don't know. I'm not really that episode. I really need to get into, but it says I can't fall asleep. Listen to that every morning when he doesn't sleep, and so that's telling. I'm thinking he's with sharing that. I feel like he's saying
wow, yeah,
sleep, and it is said. She even says it's not fair. I'm like, oh. So things like that. How can you ignore that?
Right.
because it's so
Right.
fitting. And so yeah, I'm hoping that other parents can realize that and just, be able to presume competence and know that your child is
Mm.
communicating in such a beautiful way that they've found to communicate and when they don't have any other way.
For sure. Yeah.
So I wanted to talk about one thing that is also controversial in, parenting, and even more with us parents of autistic kids
Mm.
who are, drawn to technology and screen time. So I wanted to hear your opinion about screen time and, as it pertains to language development of autistic kids. And so I wanted to hear what your opinion is on screen time.
Yeah, so screen time for Aliza has been a very positive thing. I definitely got stuck in feeling kind of ashamed about it. And once I reframed that and really looked at it from a different perspective, it has helped me to help her. And I think, like anything with your kids, screen time, you know, you want to make sure that you're um, allowing them access to things that are helpful, that are educational. You want to be aware of what they're using. We don't just hand our kids iPads and say, you have access to everything. And I think that's important to remember. Like for Aliza, there are so many apps that have been helpful for her language development. Things like, their Daniel Tiger Neighborhood has so many great apps that use the same phrases, the same intonation. It really picks up on emotions and things like that. And so those are the type of things that when she has access to, we've noticed she's, using more language, she's learning more, she's taking it in. Same thing, like she'll pull up a song or a scene from something when you can tell she's feeling a certain way. Um, there's just, there's a whole world of access to communication for them in a way that they understand. So a lot of parents of autistic kids could relate to their child liking to watch a specific show and being able to fast forward and rewind or pause.
Mhm.
Um, when you really break that down, they are learning language in chunks
Yeah.
because they can rewind it, they can control it, they can, I watch Aliza do this. And I would encourage any parent of an autistic child, if it can be hard to not get stuck in, oh my goodness, I've heard this same exact show and this same line and the same scene, time and time again. But if you can get yourself out of that and really just step back and observe, um, watching the way that she rewinds things and listens, and then as she's echoing the phrases, I start to realize her pronunciation, her enunciation, the articulation, she's building on that each time. And it's because she can control when she's hearing it. She can say, oh wait, I didn't get the tone of that right, I didn't get the letter sound on that right. And she's not verbalizing any of that, but you can see it in her, you can just see her processing, and then you see it in the result when she's scripting that. I say it all the time with a song. Watching her learn a new song is so interesting because it will start out like complete gibberish. I don't
Yeah.
understand anything she's saying. It might as well just be hums. And then it builds and it builds and it builds, and it's just like somebody learning lines for a play or something. The more you say it, the more you get into the repeating the lines. We all do this.
Mhm.
It's just we do it in our head, or we're not scripting it, we're not using it in that same way. But for Aliza, so much of her language has come from having the space and time to do that, to rewind and fast forward and pause. And that's one of the things we've noticed the most from this is the end of her second year that we've homeschooled her. And by far, that has to be the thing we've seen the most improvement on, is that when she is given the time and space to script continuously and not be told to be quiet in class,
Mhm.
that's when we see her language really developing, because she needs that. That is the way that
Yeah.
her brain processes. That's the way that I think it's also, very regulating for her. I think it's a STEM as well as language development. And so screen time has just been a game changer for us to use in that way. It's also, I imagine this is true for a lot of Gestalt language processors, and I'm just sort of starting to realize it with Aliza. But I think it has helped her with some pre-reading skills. I've noticed that she's now seeking out like a video, read aloud videos of books that she has, and she'll follow along. And
Oh,
she'll, same with like song lyrics. She loves to go on. We make like a playlist for her of all her favorite Mickey songs. And I didn't realize until I saw her pull it up, Spotify has lyrics
yeah.
available, and I will watch her and she'll just go along with it. And I'm like, so not only is she, you know, reading those words as they're saying it, she's also processing letter sounds. Why does it sound that way? There's just been so many benefits, you know, and I think trying to explain that to someone and say like, oh, I think my daughter's teaching herself to read from a song, and they're just like, really? Like,
And
are they?
yeah.
but but when you see it and you really realize that those skills are being built, it just looks different. Yeah, I think like anything with screen time, social media, internet, all of this access we have, it's as good and as positive as we can allow it to be. So, you
Yes.
know, I know there's dangers. I know there are like things that we have to be careful of. I know that people have different opinions about it, and that's totally fine. But I do think there is a lot of positive, and I hate to see it downplayed and just like screen time is going to ruin everything, because I've seen the benefits of it. And I
Yeah.
don't know how else we would have gotten that for her. So I know it's a mixed bag of things, but yeah, our opinion is definitely that we've been able to connect with her, affirm what she's doing. It's helped me to find ways to, support her in other ways outside of screen time. So it's been a good tool for both of us.
Oh, I love that. And yeah, from what you've just said, I can relate so much because Kyler does most of what you said there. Like he reads um the lyrics to his music on his,
Yeah.
we have Apple Music for him, and it's the only thing that's on his little phone, and oh, that's what he does, and he'll just look at it. And yeah, you can see him just looking at them. And I'm like, wow, so you're really like, you're learning how to read and all
Yeah.
these things. And also when he's watching Mickey Mouse, he'll even learn different languages because he's
Yes.
reading
Yeah.
the subtitles. And so,
Yes. It's
yeah.
so
And so,
fascinating.
yeah. And we will see him writing phrases from like his Mickey Mouse phrases in different languages.
Oh,
And
that's
I'll
so
have to go and look it up and see which one it is, or what he means, because sometimes he doesn't even have his iPad anymore. He just has his AAC device,
wow.
and he's just typing these phrases. And I'm like, wow, this is
That's
amazing.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I definitely share the same feeling too. I feel like screen time has really helped Kyler. I know he can read
Mm,
because of screen time.
yeah.
And it's I also felt for a while I had tried it. I think 2 years ago I tried to take his iPad away because I was falling into like the peer pressure of feeling like
Mm,
I'm a bad parent for letting him be on his iPad. And,
right.
like, yeah, so I just I tried to do that, and I regret it because it affected him in the negative way. That was like the first time he eloped because he was just trying to get out. Like, what am I gonna do here? And I didn't realize that, like, if you take your screen time away, you have to replace it. And so I
Right.
wasn't doing it. And yeah, and I just was like, wait a minute, why am I doing this? Like, I would rather have my baby here and him. And I already knew deep down that it's beneficial for him, but I was listening to others, and I was
Mm,
just, you know, like I was just feeling judged, and I've had to
yeah.
let go of that because Kyler's, well-being and what he's learning, it's more important than, what people say or think,
Yeah.
and I'm learning that, and it's been amazing to just, just be confident. And I know what I'm doing for my child, and it doesn't matter what anybody else thinks. But I also just, yeah, wanted us to talk about it so that other parents who feel like how we feel can, feel empowered in that, and just know, like, you know your child best, and
Right.
if you can see that that's what it's doing for your child, don't listen to anybody else.
Mm,
And I would love for the conversation to change on that, just to
for
acknowledge that
sure.
a screen time is not that, it's not always horrible. Like these kids really need it to communicate. It's like the
Right.
one way they've found to communicate, and they're using it in the most beautiful way,
For
creative.
sure. I completely agree. Yeah.
So we've talked about how visual language processing, is a way, is has been one of the things that has brought, connection between you and Aliza, and you shared that it's brought helped her and her brother connect, and I wanted
Mhm.
you to talk about that.
Yeah. So, for Thayer being, like I said earlier, he was a real early talker. He's always been, always been super chatty. So for him, conversation is life. Like he wants that give and take. He needs that. And that has always been something where I'm like, when is that going to catch up? And he's going to realize him and Aliza don't have that together. But of course, our kids prove us wrong all the time.
Yeah.
And Thayer is really a prime example of seeing is believing. So, like, the more I learn about Gestalt language processing and share with him, look at how your sister's using this phrase to communicate this, the more he's kind of bought into it. And so it's really become, now that he's like, all in on GLP, he understands it. He's like, yeah, this is just how her brain is wired. He is just like the best detective for figuring out her scripts and gestalts. Like she'll say something and I will be frantically like, what Mickey episode, trying to search it and
Yeah.
trying to look it up. And he's just like, oh, like I think it's the one where like they go to this cave and that, like he just is able to really help us. And you can tell he feels so proud to understand her. I always tell people they have kind of, and actually he tells people too, they have their own understanding of each other, their own way of communicating. You know, when someone says who understands Aliza best or who can communicate with her best, he always says me. It's me. I can communicate with her. I'm her brother. I know, and so he really takes pride in that, and it's so neat to see that he is grasping why she communicates like that and why her brain works like that, but then getting excited to help. Like, you know, it's not unlike he's tried before to explain things to us, whether it's like, remember that time we went to this place and we did this, and we're all like, no, we don't remember, we're not really sure what you're talking
Yeah.
about. That stuff happens all the time with our typical children. And again, we just kind of like brush it off like, oh, we didn't know, it's no big deal, eventually we'll figure it out. And I think he's able to understand that more, like having experienced it with her. She's trying to communicate something and we're trying to connect the dots, and
Yeah.
he's so funny. I've actually had a couple of friends send me videos of their kids saying something and they're like, do you have any idea what this is? And I always go to Thayer, and a couple times he's been able to figure it out. So it's been pretty cool. He gets super excited and I'm just like, yeah, and he's very technologically aware of things. So he'll like repeat the phrase into Google search, and like he's so smart. It's so
Yeah.
fun. They've
Oh,
connected in so many ways. Yeah, it's just been a really good relationship builder. And it's made it to where I no longer worry that they have to have that typical communication that siblings
yeah.
do. They have their thing, they're doing it, they're communicating. So yeah, it's been really good for their, relationship and bond as well.
Yeah, that's amazing and so beautiful. I just love that. And I feel like he's going to grow up to be such an amazing advocate for her.
Yeah.
Just understands it at such a young age, and he's going to have lived it,
Yeah.
and that's amazing. I love that it brings connection for us. I remember the one time that Kyler had been writing numbers randomly, and we were like, my son was also trying to help. It's like, what could it be? And he was just like really trying. He was like also in, because he saw how I was just a mess. I was just like, what
Yeah.
is this, Kyler? What are you trying to tell us? And so, and once we found out, it was so amazing to just know that, wow, Kyler is doing all these things, and I'm, as I learn more about it, for now, I'm the one that's most of the times is able to figure out his,
Mhm.
what he's trying to say. One time, my husband actually did it because when Kyler would share his song that says, sometimes I feel a little bit sad. That one
Mhm.
he was listening to in the car after we left his spelling teacher, and
Oh.
he loves her. And so I just shared with my husband, I was like, Kyler's been listening to this song. As soon as we get in the car, I did not put two and two together. And my husband was
Mhm.
like, it's because he misses Kelly. You're leaving Kelly. I was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's great. I was like, you didn't even try. You just
That.
figured it out. But yeah, and Kyler was happy to know that his dad, because
Mm.
that has made it so now I've told him like I'll cuddle you every day, and it's made so I'm doing that, and he looks forward to it, and he wants cuddles, and for
Mm.
his dad he wants tickles, and like it's helped us have this connection just from him figuring that out. And
Right.
Kyler learned the word tickle because before he would say uncle, uncle, but
Mm.
he learned tickle because that is the word he uses with his dad only to connect,
Yeah.
and he would go
Oh.
tickle. So
Yeah.
and that's all he does with his dad. And for me, he loves the cuddles. He'll pull me and we'll do cuddle time, and he loves it. And it's just amazing. And he has actually said, Mom, I love you," from just asking
Oh.
the tickles.
Mm.
So yeah, I just love how it does foster connection between us, and I just cannot wait to see as time goes on, as we are, get used to it more and more, just for him to feel loved and seen, and
Mm.
we long for that connection. So it's really helping it, for us. And
Yeah, definitely.
so I wanted to talk about AAC devices and how you can, we can help our Gestalt language processors with that. I've heard you talk about it, and I wanted you to expand and just talk more about that. How have you used the AAC device to support Aliza?
So a lot, you know, like I've said before, a lot of what I keep learning, I will use to um, validate her. I want her to, that's like my number one thing is I just want her to feel known and seen. And, I want her to know that like we see the things she enjoys and we see the things she doesn't enjoy, and we acknowledge the scripts that she uses. And so a lot of it came from when we first started programming her AAC device with her Gestalt. We would use things that were helpful for communication breakdown. So, like when she was getting frustrated about something and having a really strong physical reaction to it, it was like, okay, how do we reframe this to something that can be helpful for her, but where she feels validated in her feelings? So, like, the Daniel Tiger app that I was talking about, there's a lot of examples on there of where, Daniel Tiger will say, "Grr, I'm frustrated," or, he'll change the tone of his voice. He'll use a specific wording. And so we started to program some of those in and use them as models so that she would see, we understand that like this app, you like how Daniel Tiger expresses his emotions. We also want you to see that like you can use this too as a tool to show us what you mean and what you're talking about. And so a lot of it was really just trying to kind of like connect the dots of why we were having so many communication breakdowns. And then I got more into programming things that I just noticed. Like she says, I think it's Donald Duck on Mickey Mouse says, "This is exasperating." And she will repeat
I
that
know.
all the time.
Oh, it's
And finally I
cute.
was like, why don't I put that in her device and like
Yeah.
model it? And so those type of things that I would see her using. And again, a lot of times when I would program it in and then show her that the button was there, she'd give you like a, wait, like you know that I would want that there, or
Sweet.
and so now we try really hard to, again, taking that presuming competence, and if I hear her say something or if I hear her repeating a script, I will say, Aliza, let's put that in your AAC device. Like, let's put that in your speech device. And I'll add it and I'll show her the button. And sometimes she has a reaction and sometimes she doesn't. But I just, so much of what I do is wanting her to just feel understood. And one of the ways that it's been so helpful for us is with interoception. So Aliza really, really struggles with interoception and knowing what her body needs, knowing when she's hot or cold, knowing when she's hungry, knowing when she's thirsty, just that identifying factor of like what's happening and why. And finally, I was like, okay, we can use her device to program some of these things in there so that she has phrases that can be attached to those feelings. So, like in winter, she always has a hard time transitioning into wearing a coat again. So, when we would go outside, I would let her go outside without a coat for a second. And then, the goosebumps would start popping up. And I'd be like,
Mhm.
Aliza, look, you have goosebumps because you're cold. And so, in her device, I would put, oh no, goosebumps, burr, or you'd come up with some sort of phrase you could model.
Yeah.
And those are the building blocks that have really helped us. And it's just giving her a way to pair something with how she's feeling. And it's helped a lot. It's definitely still a work in progress, but
Yeah.
anybody who has a child that is a GLP and they use an AAC device, I can't recommend enough. Whether you create a phrase folder, whether you put phrases into each individual folder, I know it's hard for parents to not get hung up on how to do it properly, but I don't
Yeah.
think there is a proper way to do it. And so I think it's kind of just, analyzing how it would make sense for your child. But then, we've also done some folders of, like I said, she likes to see everything at once
Mhm.
and then pick from those things. And so when she would request like a specific Mickey episode or something like that, and she didn't have the word for what episode it was, or we couldn't understand what she was trying to say, finally I was like, oh yeah, I could put all of the episodes in her device
Yeah. And
so
she'll
that
just,
then she can use that to communicate. And what happened is similar to screen time, where she would then go into that folder and explore. Well, then her language became more clear and she was able to say what episode she wanted. So we're just always searching for, and I'm always watching other people share about how to incorporate that stuff into their everyday life, whatever that looks like, whether it's playing scenes of things that they're watching or putting things into their AAC device, or however you can make them feel like they are understood. That's been the best way for us to support her, and the most, improvement we've seen in her communication and just in our connection and our relationship.
yeah. Oh, I love that so much. An example of what I did is Kyler would, how he'll pull us to whatever he wants. And one day I just thought maybe I can teach him to say, let's go when he's pulling me. And that's one thing that I did. I wasn't even thinking it was going to stick, because sometimes when he says it verbally, he'll say that one time and then next time he's forgotten, he won't say it. And so then he did. And I just loved that I was able to do that. That was even before I knew about Gestalt language processing, actually. And then after I found out, I was able to put it in his, AAC device. As I took a picture of him pulling me and did that. He has a few words that have stuck, like,
Right.
and so he'll just say, "Let's go." And now, because of that, it was so when I heard was Katja with
Mm.
boho speechy, and I was like, wait a minute, I did that. I taught him, but I didn't know I was doing it. I was
Yeah.
just like, I'm just going to teach him, when you're pulling me like this, you say, let's go. And he's been using it. It's stuck. And so I feel like I could do that more, or have like phrases in there that are like day-to-day things that he does, that he can just go in there and use. And then if he hears it enough times, hopefully he can be able to verbalize it and
Yeah.
use it. So we're down to the last question, and this is one that I always like to ask parents at the end of the interview. What is something that Aliza has taught you about life?
Yeah. She has taught me so much, but I think the thing that sticks out the most is just to not miss all of the things, to not miss it, to not miss the moments, to not miss the lessons, to not miss the communication. Um, I think it's so easy to get caught up in what we should be doing, what we think people are judging us on, what we, milestones we think that our child's missing, or things we're not doing right, or, there's a lot of stress and pressure put on parents of autistic kids. And stepping away from that, stepping outside of that, and making sure that I give myself time to process in the moment what's happening has changed everything. And it has changed the way that I view life. Changed the way that I parent my typical child. It has changed the way that I perceive human interaction, because when you can take your own personal expectations out of a situation, when you can step back and look at the base of like, why are they doing this? How are they doing it? You notice more, and you notice the intention. And so with Aliza, there's so many moments where I'm just like, she's just brilliant. Like, she just is, she has so much insight. She has so much to teach us, so many things. And I would miss all of that if I was just constantly, and I get real wrapped up in all of the things I'm supposed to be doing and the way that I'm supposed to be supporting her and what my life should look like. But it's a constant reminder of just stepping outside of that and watching and seeing. And she's showing me already. She's teaching me things. And those are the moments too, when I get real bogged down with like comparison, or if I get worried that we're not, making progress, or, whatever it looks like. If I just give myself time to step back and observe her and really watch the way that she takes in the world, then I'm like, oh my goodness, we've come so far. She's achieved so much. And you don't always notice that in the moment when you're in the like hustle and bustle of everything. And so, yeah, she's definitely taught me to just not miss those moments. Don't take them for granted. Don't get caught up in it, and to just really like soak in those moments that she's showing me all the time.
Yeah. Oh, I just love that. Yeah, that's something that I feel like a lot of parents need as a reminder to, because comparison does that. It makes us, miss what's right, the blessings that we have right in front of us. And then if you just slow down, like you said, you'll notice, wow, we've done so much, and it just reminds you that your story is unique. It's not the same as everybody else's. Therefore, we shouldn't be comparing. But, we're humans and that happens. But yeah,
Right.
our beautiful souls, our children are here to teach us that, to remember to be in the moment and not miss it. I'm so thankful for that. Thank you so much for being willing to share your story and all about how Aliza is learning and growing. She is such an inspiration, and I am so thankful whenever I see your posts. You do such an amazing job sharing information, advocating, and just I look up to you so much, and I'm just so thankful for you, for the things that I've learned from you, because it has really helped me, be able to know that my child, the things that I didn't know about my child. And so I'm thankful for social media and how we're able to connect as autism moms and learn from each other. And yeah, so thankful that you were willing to do this interview and share with us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I loved it. And I feel the same way about you. I learn so much from your posts. I know you feel like you're learning from others, but the stuff you're putting out there is so helpful. And it just, even somebody who is in the same situation, just being able to feel that validation like you're talking about, and understanding that they are seeing in their kid, their mind isn't playing tricks on them. They're seeing it, they're validating it. And so, yeah, I love following you and love getting to connect with you. And this was really fun. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you so much for tuning in today. If you haven't yet, please consider subscribing to the channel so you can get notified whenever I post new content. Until next time.